All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today to spend your lunch hour learning together. My name is Peter Casarella. Most of you probably know me. I'm the executive director of the South Grow Regional Initiative. And this webinar is part of our series that we've been doing this year to provide education on important issues that matter to our communities throughout the year. I think this is our 7th webinar that we've covered issues ranging from housing to investment attraction and everywhere in between. Just a couple of brief announcements before we get rolling. We've got folks joining us from all over the province. This webinar series has been a partnership between South Grow and Jobs Economy and Northern Development, Prairies Canada, and Alberta Ag and Irrigation, where 4 of us have sat together to basically plan out the issues that we think are most pertinent and matter, and to put our heads together to find the right speakers to talk about the issues of the day. So thank you very much to those 3 organizations for partnering with us. And because of that, the link has gone out all over the province. And we do have folks joining us from some very interesting far-flung corners of the province of Alberta as well. So another thing before we jump into today's topic, just keep in mind that you're going to be getting emails soon for our annual Economic Development Summit in Lethbridge on March the 21st. We've got a great lineup of speakers that'll be coming down, and we'll be sending out invitations and the registration link on that coming in the next week here to everybody as well. So today we're going to be talking about best practices in investment attraction and hosting international trade missions. The last time that I attended a session like this, I think Linda organized it as part of our economic development professionals group that she used to host every 2 months down here in person, way back before the pandemic. And we figured it was time to bring it around again as the world opens up. So we've got today with us 2 individuals from Invest Alberta who I'll introduce here shortly, who deal with this on a daily basis. And they've got some great advice and tips for us and are willing to answer questions about how things work in the ecosystem, what supports there are available, if we have folks coming in from out of the region, and about some of the protocols around how you work with governments in order to get the most out of these kind of trade missions. So without further ado, I'm just going to introduce Bree and Thomas and then hand it off to them. So we have Brianne Smith, who is the Investor Experience Specialist with Invest Alberta. Brianne plays a pivotal role in supporting the investment attraction team by facilitating inbound investor visits, and she offers valuable strategic guidance to the team and collaborates closely with a network of partners to ensure the seamless implementation of these visits. Her enthusiasm for uncovering Alberta's hidden gems and spotlighting locally made products is evident in her approach, and her contributions are key to highlighting Alberta's advantages and Invest Alberta's commitment to supporting economic development in both urban and rural areas. And I've had the privilege of working with Brianne and some of her colleagues on several inbound trade missions already here in Southern Alberta. And then we also have Thomas. Thomas is an officer with the Global Partnerships Group at Invest Alberta. He's a born and raised Albertan, but he has a deep-seated passion for this province, which drives him to help it flourish for generations to come. He serves as Invest Alberta's Global Partnerships Officer, providing concierge services for investors who are looking to tap into Alberta's strong, business-friendly ecosystem. By connecting investors with Invest Alberta's global partners, Thomas acts as a vital catalyst for inbound investments into the province, helping attract over $10 million so far of investment into Alberta, with more growth for the province in the pipeline. And he's only been with the Corp since last spring, I believe, so that $10 million is a good start. So I'm going to be quiet now and pass the mic over to Bree and Thomas. Thank you for your time today.
Wonderful, Peter. Thank you so much for the introductions. Good afternoon, everyone. It is a pleasure to have the opportunity to speak with you today. I'm looking forward to sharing some of the best practices when hosting investors and larger delegations in your community. As Peter kind of mentioned, my role is a unique one at Invest Alberta. It emphasizes the importance that small details matter, first impressions last, and unique experiences create lasting memories. When I support our business development team members, like Thomas, for example, they are the main point of contact with the investor, which remains consistent during the investor journey as we see the opportunity through. I support all elements of the planning process as I look at the big picture, so everything from logistics to the experiential elements. Thomas?
Oh, thanks, Bree. Hello, everyone. Thank you as well for attending everything. It's an honor to be able to present and talk about this quite incredibly important topic. First and foremost, I enjoy working with all of you as part of global partnerships. We work with our partners all throughout the province to ensure that when a client, investor, or any other delegate that we end up seeing ends up being put into what we love and cherish, which is our own business ecosystem, and so that we keep as much of the growth in Alberta and serve them with Alberta-made products as well.
So some key themes that we're going to cover today are the planning components to a visit, who to include and what to showcase, hosting elements and elevated experiences, what to do if foreign government officials are in attendance, some checklists for success, and how to mitigate common challenges, while covering themes of why Alberta. So we have a few resources that we have for you, and we are happy to share this presentation afterwards. So we can jump in. A site visit to Alberta might involve tours of potential sites, exploration of commercial real estate properties, discussions with local officials about regulatory requirements, and meetings with Alberta-based suppliers and partners. The goal is to provide investors with a comprehensive understanding of what it would be like to conduct business in the region and to help them make an informed investment decision.
Absolutely. Thanks, Bree. And so the best part is when you look at trade and foreign direct investment, I just popped some definitions on the screen. It really does feel like they're two very different things. However, at the end of the day, they are the complements of each other on the same global economic coin, so to speak. So when you look at trade, when it comes to trade missions, they're usually and typically led by foreign delegations, usually government-led, while FDI missions are usually typically led by multinational firms. If it wasn't for those government missions to set up at least free trade agreements such as CUSMA, then you're not able to have those local connections that would fuel foreign direct investment. But when it comes down to it, the trade side, you'll have more of a local flair to it. So when you have the little differences and nuances in terms of those negotiations between your own local stakeholders and companies, then you'll and the foreign delegation, the FDI will have very similar, but instead of it trying to sell those goods and services or buy goods and services, it'll be trying to set up shop here ultimately. But that's kind of some of the small nuances from a very broad picture, but to be able to actually get the most out of it, I'll let Bree go into the program foundations.
So when welcoming guests to your community, there's a foundation that can set you up for success. I want to start by saying that it's important to highlight elements that we may take for granted at times to ensure that these are kept top of mind. So planning visits are exciting, they're time consuming, and they're always changing with intricate details. Like a puzzle, some start with the edges to get a sense of the big picture. It's important to step back and identify what legwork can be done and needs to be done before they arrive. What are you showcasing during the visit? And what outcomes or goals do you have your sights on? What do you want your guests to do, think, and say? Identify the anchor of the program. So consider the time frame, time of year, duration of the visit, and what is taking place in the community. Is there a networking event? Is there a conference? Or are the dates being planned convenient for them as it complements other business travel? We need to be aware of cultural differences and customs that may impact the visit. Ensure your guests feel comfortable and respected throughout their stay. If an investor is not fluent in English, look to others who can provide translation services to ensure efficient communication. This too will impact the duration of each meeting and your itinerary as a whole, so it's important to be mindful of this right at the start. Research cultural differences and business customs. Asian business culture, for example, places importance on exchanging business cards with both hands, followed by an acknowledgement of the card. Offer to provide transportation when appropriate, because we want to make sure that the logistics are out of mind and that the focus is on the business conversation.
Perfect. One of the big keys to aligning is making sure that we ensure our communication is perfect. So even though there might be a barrier, you can always find, as Bree mentioned, those translators. But ask questions early and often. Make sure that we're reaching everyone's needs and understanding. Coordinate the agenda with the delegation and stakeholders. Make sure everyone has agreed on what they want to talk about, so no one gets that bait and switch feeling that no one likes. understanding the language barrier as well. Sometimes we do have some sayings such as ESG instead of environmental sustainability goals or governance. Doesn't always translate very well. So instead of using acronyms that we're very much accustomed to, you might have to use the long form instead. That way you ensure the message is being conveyed accurately across multiple different languages. This way it will lead to aligning goals. So what is the goal for your delegation? What is the goal for yourselves, and what's the goal for the stakeholders? Because each one is going to be different. And then also, which stakeholders should be at the table? Not everyone needs to be there, but we have to figure out and understand the business model to be able to ensure that everyone there gets the most out of that interaction.
And once an understanding of the goals are outlined and the visit purpose is established, you're able to identify then who is best to include within the program and your planning process. So take on a coordinated approach with your partners in planning and the execution phase. Pick up the phone, create shared folders, and ensure alignment to avoid repetition. Whoever is leading the visit is steering the ship. It is important for those you are asking to be involved to clearly understand what that ask is, as Thomas just mentioned, and additionally provide any background that would be helpful to facilitate the discussion in advance. As we know, sometimes these visits happen last minute, so it's important to give appreciation to those who are at sometimes dropping everything to support you. Do your research and make the most time allotted in your program. Highlight local associations, agencies, and chambers. Highlight business-friendly policies, incorporate success stories and community champions that align with the business goals of the investor visiting. Ask yourself, is there someone in a similar industry or from the same country that can speak to the ease of doing business in Alberta or how they overcame roadblocks?
Thank you. So now, as I mentioned before, stakeholders that you want to include for an investor visit or any delegates in general should be notable employers. So for example, let's say you have a oil and gas company coming in. It should also be the ones that might be the intermediaries that want to provide logistics, whether that is also a company that might be benefiting from that local side as well, or any petrochemicals on the other side. Post-secondaries, we have a lot in this province. A lot of investors or even delegations are concerned about talent and labor. Being able to ensure that we have not only the expertise, but ability to demonstrate that what they're coming for has future plans is key to success. Your chambers of commerce, we're a very unique province, and we also do business very uniquely too. So we also need to be able to understand and present that understanding, and our chamber of commerce is a great place to start. An MLA or an MP, if there are foreign delegates from another government, we also want to bring our foreign delegates from our own governments. Municipal leadership is also key. They're coming to invest in your city. They're trying to get your goods, your services. So having those municipal leaderships also ensures a demonstration that politically we are stable and able to ensure that growth is feasible for the upcoming future. And there also could be other pertinent stakeholders. A good one could be CPKC or CN when it comes to logistics and so on and so forth. Additionally, we also want to be able to demonstrate a quality of life. Even though they're only here for a small time, we want to demonstrate why this province is special and also why your communities are special as well. So that includes everything from cost of living, demonstrate the affordability and growth potential for any newcomers that might want to come. If it's a trade side, they may not feel like it right away, but trade is a catalyst for people to move here and also set up shop and make this area feel like the home that we all love here already. We also want to show recreational amenities. Nashville isn't just known for, a good example is a place like Nashville. It's not just known for, boots and everything and a good place to do business. It's also known for its concerts. So we want to show that off as well in our own special ways. So whether that's our sports, parks, food and local hotspots, that's a great place to start. Culture activities too. Like Calgary has its Calgary Stampede. I know a lot of other places have their own rodeo, historical sites like Head Smash and Buffalo Jump are phenomenal, Waterton. Those places are able to demonstrate where we've come from, and it provides roots that we're able to tap into for other generations that are looking to move here or even understand what it's like to do business here.
On that cultural activities point, I think it's really helpful to know in advance of their planning if they plan to have any personal days here as well, because that's another recommendation that you can add in advance and it can really showcase the province. Okay, so when planning to host foreign government officials during a mission, ensure you familiarize yourself with protocols and etiquette awareness. Do your research about the individual, rank, and country. Some key indicators to ensure the authenticity of the government official you are communicating with is confirm it through official communication channels. Double check email addresses if you're not sure. My rule always is if it feels funny, it probably is. So double check or seek embassy or consulate confirmation. The Alberta Protocol Office is a great resource as well as it leads all first official visits to the province. Be sure to pronounce names accurately. Consul generals do not have titles. They can be addressed as Mr. or Mrs. their name or simply as Consul General. Ambassadors or High Commissioners of Commonwealth countries can be addressed by their title, Your Excellency, or as Ambassador, their last name, or simply as Ambassador. When you greet a delegation, you should greet the principal person first and be sure to greet all members of the delegation following. If the leader wishes to introduce the delegation, please allow them to do that. When introducing yourself and your colleagues, mention your titles. Determine before your guests arrive if gifting is necessary or appropriate. If you are unsure, it is acceptable to ask the visitor's staff in advance of the trip if they will be bringing any gifts. Noting that if they do, you would like to be able to reciprocate appropriately. Just be sure that the item is suitable for travel, so do your research ahead of time. Be mindful of the size, weight, and fragility during travel. Pass along some recommendations in advance of their arrival. Share advice on what city to fly into, where to stay, what to pack, the expected weather, and some suggestions on how to spend personal time. It can be as simple as adjusting the travel route to showcase a scenic viewpoint. Your guests may be coming from a concrete jungle. What we take for granted could be eye-opening for them. So showcase the mountains, prairies, and rivers. It will have them pulling out their phones to capture the moment. Share stories, especially in transit when appropriate. Share your connection to the community, highlight some of your go-to restaurants when driving down Main Street, and as you get to know them individually, highlight what you'd recommend based on their personal preferences. Those smaller yet impactful details can include a handwritten welcome card and a small package featuring Alberta-made products and consumables. So speaking of that checklist for success, this can act as your toolbox. You may already have a preferred vendor list for meeting spaces, transportation, and restaurants. When considering the meeting space, whether it be off-site or at your office, think, if we're not arriving together, are the directions clear? Include suggested parking and a mapping link. Is the meeting room itself easy to find? Or should someone provide directional support at the front door? Check the temperature, have a place for jackets, and point out restrooms if unclear. If you're giving a presentation, have this cued in advance. If there's audio, visual, we all know the headaches that can come with technology. Consider the time of day and duration of the meeting. Offer light snacks and refreshments, especially if there are time changes, jet lags. People may need coffee later in the afternoon than someone typically. When it comes to transportation and site visits, offer to provide transportation, whether it be your personal vehicle or a rental. Make people feel comfortable by offering a clean, spacious ride that can facilitate group conversations. Keep in mind you'll be getting in and out of the vehicle often, or check the frequency of that to make sure it's not a headache. Additionally, it never hurts to bring water or snacks just in case. And then lastly, with business meals, some points to consider are asking for allergies or dietary restrictions in advance, check the noise level of the space, check the reputation, the standard or the service standards. If you're going to be waiting there for a while to get your food, you might want to reconsider that decision, and then have guiding questions prepared in advance. This is all to say that it would be easy if everything went as you planned, but often there are roadblocks, there are unexpected turns along the way. So planning time, non-responsiveness, and hosting costs. So setting expectations early on can help frame what is realistic and possible. The last thing you want to do is overpromise and underdeliver. If not enough time has been provided in advance, communicate what you are able to accomplish within the planning time. I would offer that at minimum 2 to 3 weeks would be cutting it close, depending on the size of the delegation and the duration of the visit. Those are the nuances that kind of keep each visit different. Typically with larger delegations or trade missions, you'll have advance notice. Keep an eye on statutory holidays as well. I know a couple months ago I ran into a situation where we had a last minute visit. We found out on a Thursday that they were confirmed to come. We had the Monday off and they were going to be arriving the Wednesday morning. And just setting those clear expectations that those who they would be interested in meeting with might not be as responsive, because typically people may take that Friday off. So really just setting the stage and communicating what is common on our end of things to the contact is also very appropriate. And then just reinforcing that team approach. So Invest Alberta is able to assist with such missions, and I would encourage any of you on the call to reach out to myself or our stakeholder relations manager, Xiao Young Thomas, of course, as well, as we'd be happy to ensure a member of our team can be involved in the planning process and hosting. If you're dealing with someone who is non-responsive, try to take notice of this early on, directly ask their preferred methods of communication, and create regular check-ins through calls or even WhatsApp. You may have to adjust your schedule to complement their time zone. And then hosting costs. Of course, this can be a challenge when you have a limited budget. Look to partners for support, and then also just be clear within the itinerary if a meal is being hosted or not. So following the visit, continue to show your commitment to their investment by providing next steps and staying engaged, as this is a long-term relationship. So identify room for improvement and request feedback as well. There's not a mission or a visit that you don't find some learning lessons to implement for future. So up next, we're going to pivot to some Alberta advantages, but I wanted to highlight resources available. So Invest Alberta has a partner portal with marketing materials and access to view what events our team members will be going to, along with the Alberta Agriculture and Irrigation team has an Alberta regional dashboard. So I've linked that as well, which is an online tool that provides vital economic information and insight about the Alberta's regions and municipalities. Just speaking on government protocols and gifting, I've included some links to resources as well. And then when sharing this presentation afterwards, we can also include our regional investment community profile template.
Sweet. Thanks, Bree. Now that we actually have everything in terms of how to go through the process, here's a few key characteristics that can kind of add that nice it factor to be able to, make that last minute jump and push. So one thing that defines Alberta over all other jurisdictions is going to be our make happen attitude, whether that's rain, temperatures that are unreasonable at this point. It really is what separates us from a lot of other places. We're a thriving and stable economy. We're also quite a diverse economy. We're young, educated, and talented. It's a great place to call home, raise a family, and start a career or business. It's incredibly safe here. And that's one thing that in some places in the world, they just don't have. And we're also welcoming communities and collaborative business culture, and have a collaborative business culture. Alberta is the third most diverse province in the entire country. And yet everyone loves to move here, as we've seen as of late. And so we want to make sure that everyone stays here. And that collaborative nature really sings through on how happy people are once they get here. For some more additional why Alberta choices, our cost of doing business is quite affordable in comparison, especially across our own country, let alone the whole world. Our speed of doing business. We've reduced our red tape across the board and streamlined permitting and zoning processes. If you're on the local level and you have any chance to do so, it is really helpful. Business moves at a different speed than government. And so if we're able to get as close to that as possible, or even have definitive timelines, we are ahead of the game. The ease of doing business here really can't be exaggerated. It is one of the most amazing things about Alberta, and is continually some parts of the feedback that we get from international partners stating that this is why we love to come here and have conversations, and also why we want to come here and grow our businesses as well. Additionally, our great minds and bright talents have really fueled our growth and success, and will always continue to do so. Our streamlined immigration process really makes that international lens that much easier for them. The affordability in comparison to other major jurisdictions, while also having the ability to fly anywhere, tap into the entirety of the US within a very short time span, really furthers that as well. We're able to train our work. We have generations to come that are going to be part of some of the top universities in the world from 26 post-secondary institutions, including digital transformation and upskilling. We're able to also retain this talent as well. A lot of places are having exits. Look at California, heck, Vancouver and Toronto. Additionally, this entrepreneurial culture and collaborative culture also aids and lends well to making sure that that talent stays here and is able to foster and grow that business for multiple generations and other iterations of their businesses to come. Lastly, we have solutions to global problems. We're facing an energy crisis, so we're able to have sustainable fuels. Our agri-tech and our agriculture in general is quite sustainable. Alternative proteins is booming in Alberta. Our artificial intelligence and machine learning is some of the best and leading institutions in the world. Our aerospace and autonomous systems is a fastly growing and extremely popular. And we've actually seen an uptake internally of inquiries related to this sector as a whole. And hydrogen, as our fuel source of tomorrow is starting to shape up, hydrogen is going to be key to that. And with that, I'd actually really like to thank you all for being a part of this presentation. It has been fantastic to discuss and present to you today.
Thank you.
Also, we'll open the floor to any other questions as well. I see there's a few in the chat.
Thank you very much, both of you. Very informative. Any questions that anybody would like to type or raise your hand, and we'll make sure to get you mic time to ask the folks. You know that I do have a long list of questions prepared if nobody else comes up with them.
Good.
If I can find the list of questions to pull it up.
I'll ask a question, Peter.
Yeah.
My screen's pretty bad. My limited experience with site selection, investment attraction missions. We had one come to Alberta, and later learned that, in short, the food was more important than the hotel. Right? It seemed like the hotels were overpriced. They didn't need it so fancy, but they would have preferred to have better food. Is that consistent with experience and advice that you would give?
I find it ranges. You want to be able to offer, what I typically do is offer a variety of hotel suggestions at a different price point. So then when they go to book their travel, it's on them to identify what would be important. And then through conversations, see how big they are into being foodies. I know Thomas and I are definitely foodies, so we can pull out all the stops in some of the locations that are some of our favorites. But I think it really goes back to making those small moments count. So when you are in travel between one meeting to the next, or if there's any opportunity to get to know people for who they are, try to see what their interests are, then tailor your suggestions throughout the rest of the program to match that energy of what their interests are. I would also say provide recommendations on what you order often at whatever restaurant you're at. So
Thanks.
And then
I
the
think
other side, oh, go ahead.
I just think the biggest takeaway and reminder for me is have them book their accommodations. Provide options, but I think that's where we went wrong. When push came to shove, they started doubling up on rooms, and we ended up with a bunch of extra rooms.
yeah, I had, this was quite some time ago, but we had a delegation of, I want to say it was between 12 or 16 people. It was a very, very last minute visit and quite a short duration, but I had arranged transportation from the airport to the hotel. And when I was arranging the gifting to have the items dropped off, it was just the welcome cards and the locally made Alberta products. I was chatting with the hotel. They had told me in advance this is where they were going to stay. That's why I had organized the transportation to that hotel, only to find out that they were on a plane to Alberta and had not actually confirmed the hotels. So it's always best to do that due diligence too. I mean, some people range in the information that they're willing to provide you, if it is confirmation numbers or not. But I always use that. I always use those welcome gifts as a bit of a check and balances on my end to know, okay, we do know that they are actually staying there. Okay, they have actually booked their travel. So those are some additional little tips. Thomas, you were going to say something too, sorry.
Oh, I was just going to mention, like, we also had an investor from India recently, and so he had particular dietary restrictions. So he was vegetarian, and so also sometimes, you know, as someone who isn't a vegetarian, it's hard to have those options. And sometimes just reaching out to people who you might know, where they have a certain like spice tolerances, is that something that they want to have? There's a lot of like small local mom and pop shops that you might not necessarily be what we always visit to, but it might be something that they're applicable. And so asking those questions, as Bree mentioned, are really, really critical in understanding the food. But the food here is actually one of the reasons investors really do like to come here, with multiple places and people saying like, wow, I didn't think I'd have like the food that I eat at home being this good, or because it's a mom and pop, having basically a home cooked meal at a restaurant with all those amenities, it's a dream for a lot of people, let alone what we take for granted every single day.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much. Yeah, I think we got a little unlucky, just bad days on some of the restaurants, but overall, thanks for the advice. Yeah.
I have a question while other people think about what they want to ask. So the Regional Economic Development Alliances, South Grow, and all of our partners around the province are in conversations, well, been in conversations since September, on how to fulfill Minister Matt Jones' mandate specifically to work with the regions to help facilitate on-the-ground investment attraction. From your desks in Calgary, where you're facilitating these trade tours, what are some of the most useful things that you could get from us, from our communities, from our Regional Economic Development Alliances, which would help you in your work as you're trying to facilitate these kind of trade missions?
So I'll hop on that one. So one of the first things is also what we like to say, investable opportunities. So whether that is a really good understanding of what's available currently, like what's a short term, you know, within the next 1 to 2 years of what someone can invest into. It's kind of the first way of saying it. So the next side of it is, where are areas of growth that you want to ensure is going to have long-term sustainability for your community. So how do I say? So like, let's say you want to put in a new power plant. Let's say it's geothermal, nuclear, something that isn't typically found in our area because there is capacity restraints, especially in the south regions, right? So if that's something that you want to track, tell us like what's the permits that you need in your local area. Have like a little list of what these topics are. Be able to have like a definitive leadership like conversation locally to also say like, this is what we want, this is what we're looking for, this is like the area growth that we have. The short-term stuff is what we're capable of right now. Also having the capabilities list is another really good one. So for example, these are the local companies that we have that are big. Let us know those 100%. Because if I don't know who your suppliers could be for a potential investor that's coming in, it's very hard for us to be able to advocate on your behalf. The next side of it too is also capacity for growth. What is the zoning going to look like? We could attract a lot of talent, but the problem is if we don't have nowhere to house them, no one wants to go. The other side is, even if, let's say, one region doesn't have it, but it's two neighboring towns in two different regions, it's always good to know that surrounding area as well as water capabilities, everything like that. I think that's an easy way to have those conversations initially from a business development and economic development standpoint, because it allows us to go to larger scale to meet the minister's larger jobs mandate and provide something substantial and have those conversations.
Right. So know what you have available as far as land, utilities, prices goes, and then share that with the Invest Alberta team or through your RETA to the Invest Alberta team. Okay. Seeing no questions, I have another question. So here's a big one that we always grapple with. An example, in 2019, 2020, we had a lot of folks showing up from the Netherlands and from Western Europe on trade missions to Southern Alberta. And we thought, great, they're interested in investing in Southern Alberta. And then we quickly realized that they were wanting us to come over and invest in the Netherlands, in their agri-food corridors. They were trying to build relationships with our companies to go take capital over there. What level of, what kind of numbers do you see of trade missions coming here because they genuinely want to invest in the Canadian market, those versus those who are looking to bring attention back to where they come from? And how do you navigate something like a bilateral relationship so that there's wins for both?
Good question. So when it comes to the amount that we see coming in, it really depends. We see quite a high number, especially from Europe. I don't have the numbers on me, but I'm happy to get you this, Peter. However, when it does come to managing those bilateral relationships, it's kind of that empathetic approach. So understanding what they want and understanding where they're coming from. So if there are direct parallels, so I know in terms of the Netherlands, they have a very similar climate, they have very similar agricultural structure. If you're taking it from that perspective, then because you have that understanding, then you can then approach those companies here that have very similar capabilities and then progress and move that forward over there, or have those conversations with them because they are part of your community, right? And then if they have that and vice versa, similar capabilities, say, hey, if we bring in X amount of these people who do X, Y, Z, we would also like to have that conversation vice versa, because it is a give and take, right? So if you approach it from that perspective, then you're able to facilitate that kind of bilateral true relationship, right? And open up those trade lines. The other side of it is kind of the boots on the ground approach. It's hard for you or I without booking a long flight to get over there. So starting to leverage the Invest Alberta team that's over there, the Alberta International Trade Offices, your local trade commissioner service as well, to be able to facilitate those conversations as well while being at home, or heck, even use your digital assets as well, like Teams, Zoom, and so on, can also help break down those help make those bilateral relationships strong, but also make sure that it breaks down the gap of time zones and everything else in distance.
Peter, I don't know if I could hear that last question. I'm not too sure if it was just me.
I was muted. I was wondering if you could talk about the sectors that are really on fire right now. What are you seeing the most activity in when it comes to inbound trade missions, looking at Alberta?
When it comes to that, we've seen everything from renewables is still very, very strong, even though there's been a temporary pause. Additionally, we've also seen a lot in agriculture. Agriculture is huge. Furthermore, manufacturing is also starting to pick up quite a bit. But for the most part, there's quite a few other ones. Tech is starting to get really popular up here, especially in that Calgary and Edmonton region, but just as a whole. But also geolocation, stuff like the Garmin side of it. Geomatics, I believe is the term. But yeah, so that's kind of the general sectors, usually are traditional ones. Petroleum products is also another one. Hydrogen is booming. I know there's a new nuclear group that's coming in. That's also, I think, it's even from Ontario. So yeah, there's basically everything that we're typically seeing is currently getting very booming. One of the big things that's driving it is our political stability B, the US is very expensive, and immigration and talent is really hard to get there. Well, it's not here. Vancouver and Toronto and Montreal are difficult markets as well, but also anything that has power relation to it. We do have capacity. So those large scale manufacturing positions are starting to come up and get inquiries about because of that capacity. So it's all over the place, but it's very healthy to say the least.
Okay. We got a hand up, Bill.
Yeah, thank you, Peter, and thank you, Thomas and Brianne, for your presentation here. My question to you, and I'm with the town of Coaldale, is that you talked about language support, and oftentimes that might be an issue. How do you handle language support when you're building your team?
If I can take this one with this would be a perfect example. If you have someone coming in, you don't have language support within your own team. Great example to ask Invest Alberta for support, see if we have anyone that can be complementary to the program, along with there are translation services available. And also too, it would be mindful to know, or it would be important to know if they are bringing any translation services themselves, because that oftentimes is an option too. And just really being transparent with vocalizing your want to be able to add the most value to their time and be able to move mountains to be helpful to them. So I wouldn't stray away from asking any of those questions to whoever you're communicating directly with, and then based upon the answers that you receive, then look to partners and additional support.
And also to add on to that, Brie, if I may, another great option too would be to have like a volunteer position. A lot of our communities have quite diverse backgrounds, and depending on where this area is from, you can kind of request a volunteering like RFP just for, or have a position in general to be able to leverage our diverse communities as well.
Thanks, guys. We've got a question in the chat from Jatin. I hope I'm saying that right. Who is a lawyer, an immigration lawyer from Calgary, who runs, but we run to immigrant serving settlement agencies for this kind of support whenever it is necessary. Oh, okay. It's just a statement. Sorry. Yeah. Looking for any more questions in the chat there. If anyone has anything else to add or ask of our guests. Well, if nobody has any more questions, we'll head towards winding up a little bit early today. Give everybody a bit of time for their lunch hour back. Just to share a little bit of final information with everyone. So what South Grow has done on this file in the past year, aside from being the on-demand go-to, is we've been pursuing a global marketing strategy for the second year in a row, where we've been advertising across North America into Western Europe, directly talking about the opportunities that are available in agri-food here in Southern Alberta. That marketing has been awareness building and has been focused on getting as many eyes knowing the word Southern Alberta in the Agri-Food Opportunity Association, and has been quite successful. We've been refunded for next year, and we're looking at developing our pipeline so that we're actually doing lead response and working more with Invest Alberta to basically make sure that none of the interest that's now being driven to the Southern Alberta Investment and Trade Initiative website, that is a collaboration between South Grow, Alberta Southwest, Lethbridge County, and Economic Development Lethbridge, so that none of that interest that we're developing is in fact lost. In the past year, we also had a consultant go around and talk to every one of our communities and build those asset sheets specifically for your community. So there now is completed sheets that were finished just before Christmas that I have on my desk to get to and shovel off to Invest Alberta. Both Alberta Southwest and South Grow did this project over the past year. And so we have fairly up-to-date and relevant information on all of the communities that we'll be putting in front of Invest Alberta, so they know what's available down here when they're having conversation with interested stakeholders. But of course, I recommend, if you have the capacity in your community, reach out, build relationships with the folks at Invest Alberta, because top of mind means that you get picked and thought about when folks like Thomas are dealing with folks from overseas who are interested in Alberta. Any closing remarks from Brianne and Thomas today?
Just thank you again so much for the opportunity. It was a pleasure to share our best practices with you, and don't hesitate to reach out if you have any additional questions or just want to make a connection. So thanks.
Awesome. And you'll send this slide deck to us as well?
We can, yeah.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Thomas, I cut you off there.
Oh yeah, no problem. That's important too. Important to have as well. But yeah, I just want to say thank you on behalf of Invest Alberta as well. Without having regions like South Grow and all other parts of Alberta, we wouldn't be able to have any economic growth. Calgary and Edmonton definitely seem like a hub, but the realistic part of it is both of those jurisdictions are kind of tapped out, and everywhere else is where all the potential lie and the potential for quite significant projects to come as well. You guys are the backbone of Alberta. Seriously, was it northern region alone? The northern regions alone make up what, 8% of the wealth driven, based off of just the resources as well. So if it wasn't for that, wasn't for your hard work, your due diligence, everything else, we wouldn't be able to have the problems that we all love and cherish so gratefully and want to have and see prosper for the future. So thank you on behalf of all of us too.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate your time and your expertise. Don't hesitate to reach out to Thomas and Brianne. Their contact information is all readily available. They are very Googleable. And thanks everyone for attending today.
Thank you all very much.